Hello and welcome to After Hours, brought to you by the Emory Hotel, the home of Horology in London.
A place where we truly celebrate the art of time well spent. Joining me is none other than the brilliant author, historian and journalist, Nick Fox. Together we'll be sharing the heady cocktail of all the things we love most about the watch world. Tune in as we unveil the rock stars of haute horology, one-of-a-kind watch designs, an exclusive window into the world of watchmaking.
Welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're watching this. Good morning, perhaps. It looks familiar, but there is one thing missing. Unfortunately, George Bamford, my partner in this particular crime, has had to take the day off to do some actual real work, leaving me to hold the fort in my tweed suit. But I'm happy to say that we have a very, very important guest on the show today, Mr. Ben Clymer, the inventor of Hodinkee, and the only man who got out of watch journalism with a fortune intact. Ben, how are you?
Nick, great.
It's great to see you.
Likewise. How are you?
Still here, still going.
Yeah, likewise.
So, first of all, for the person who's been under a rock for 20 years, explain how you invented the internet for watches.
Well, so I come from a fairly middle-class background in upstate New York, which is actually closer to Canada than New York City, called Rochester.
Rochester, New York, lovely.
Have you been?
Yeah.
Have you actually been?
Yes, I have.
Why?
I've actually been up it's all historic, isn't it?
It is. It was the home of Eastman Kodak, home of Xerox, home of Bausch & Lomb. I mean, really iconic American brands. And then they all went away. And so it's become a little bit of a, it's certainly not a ghost town, but it's not what it once was, we'll say that. So I was raised under that kind of that umbrella, and both my parents were effectively teachers. So I was not raised in the world of the Emory Hotel and Patek Philippe's, etc., but always aspired to kind of be around them. And then I went into kind of the standard white guy thing.
It wasn't like the Deer Hunter where you were all working in Steel Town.
It wasn't quite like that.
Okay.
Yeah, we were okay.
Just to contextualize.
Yes, we were okay, but ended up going into management consulting after college, which I actually loved, and then ended up working at UBS, Swiss Bank. And then something happened in 2008 that I'm sure you're familiar with, where Lehman Brothers collapsed, right? And I was 24 years old, and I was working in finance, and I was a low man on the totem pole. And I just saw how the powers that be kind of treated, not necessarily, I didn't deserve anything, I was a kid, but treated people that had spent their careers there, and it just really made me uncomfortable. And I said, you know what, I had always wanted to be a writer in the back of my mind, but I also wanted to buy a Rolex. Yeah. And those two don't often align.
Very, very fine ambitions.
Indeed. So I decided to start blogging, really, for fun, about my grandfather's Omega on Tumblr, which was a large blogging platform back in the day. And when I say blogger, I mean like real blogger, like in the 2008 sense. In many ways, kind of the original influencers. Ended up writing for
that was the days of the purists and things like that, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Online, the two most popular platforms were Time Zone and the Purists. Yeah. Time Zone was really the US group, and then the Purists were in Singapore, effectively. And they had great influence, but to be honest with you, I was unfamiliar with them. I didn't know them at all, and I think that's probably what allowed me to do what I did, because if I knew about them, I would have tried to join them. Yeah. Instead, I did my own thing. And so I came at watches from a very American, very middle-class mindset, which was really focused on vintage at the time. And so I found these stories, Paul Newman Daytona and Steve McQueen, blah, 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 and I started going to these auctions in New York City, usually at Antiquorum, which is, I would say a shell of what it used to be. It's not even in the US anymore. And it would be me and these dealers and nobody else.
You know that I used to go to South Kensington here in London, and this was in the 80s, so 20 years, I think, before you were going to auctions. And it was exactly the same. It was not quite sawdust on the floor, but it was a room full of dealers, half of them Italian.
Absolutely.
And me.
Yep. And it was really, I mean, it was desolate, and nobody had interest. And then when I began to write about them, we started to pick up a decent following. And I remember on the blog, the first time we had 100 readers, then 1,000 readers, then 10,000 readers in a day. And I could see the traffic, obviously. And then people from GQ, from How to Spend It, from other wonderful platforms said, hey, why don't you write about watches for us? And I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it for a reduced rate, sometimes free, if you link back to Hodinkee and give Hodinkee a little bit of credit for what we're doing. And they all agreed, because it was basically free content. And the site got bigger and bigger. I ended up applying to journalism school in New York City, got in. And while I was in grad school, we started to get a lot of press. The press would cover us because we were so different than everybody else.
Well, you were. I mean, also it looks doubly different because, of course, Switzerland is very traditional. Yep. I mean, it's the old Mr. Hayek joke is he wanted to die in Switzerland because everything happened 10 years later.
That's right.
And so I think that I remember when you were at the GPHG one time, and you actually photographed the audience and posted them on something called Instagram, which was
right.
an entire novelty.
That's exactly right. And, I remember Elizabeth Dorr, who I'm sure you know, asked me to write for something called the Wristwatch Annual in 2010.
Yes.
And she asked me to write about social media. And if you go back, and I have a copy of it somewhere, and I listed how many followers each company had on Instagram. Hodinkee had the most.
Yeah.
Patek, Rolex were not on Instagram.
No, Patek wasn't. I remember that was only recently.
It was news. I mean, it was really news when Patek. MB&F, I think, had the most, and it was probably 3,000 followers.
Yeah.
And so the idea of approaching this industry from, again, like a middle class mindset, an American point of view, and doing it in a way that's purely digital was what we did. But I think what allowed us to succeed is my reverence for people such as yourself and people that have been around a long time before, and then. Because the blogger was really a four-letter word, if that makes any sense.
It was a four-letter word.
Oh my God! I mean,
blogger.
Yeah, exactly.
Pronounced.
It was really, frowned upon. So then, when publicists in New York would introduce me to CEOs, or ever say, "Well, this guy's a graduate student at Columbia University, the most prestigious journalism school in the world. He's different than everybody else." And that was part of the thinking in doing that program, which I frankly I don't know that I needed to do, but it certainly did help.
I was going to say, I mean, I never received a scrap of, and it probably shows, but I never received a scrap of training on.
You're better off, yeah.
And I mean, I would have thought, journalism is just practice, really.
It is. Yeah, I mean, look, I had no training in writing, and it really did teach me to pull out my own bias and my own blah, blah, blah.
I put in the bias, actually. I think that's important.
You put it right back in. But also, I mean, in New York, Columbia Journalism School is the most well-connected institution there is in media, right? So all of a sudden, open doors at the New York Times, Vogue, GQ, et cetera. So did that, and then when I was graduating, all of my classmates were looking for jobs at Vogue and GQ. Yeah. And some of them getting them, some of them not. And I said, I've got a job. I'm going to do Hodinkee full time. And then off to the races.
You were off to the races, weren't you?
It was okay.
But so what was the defining moment at Hodinkee that you knew you'd sort of cross a Rubicon?
Sure. So the first time we had somebody approach us, I was just writing for fun, and I was making a little dollars and cents here and there. And then one day, a guy named Francois emailed me directly and said, "Hey, I want to meet you." And he was at the time the president of AP.
He did a very good job he did a very, very good job in America.
Oh my God!
I mean, it was amazing.
He was amazing.
He did a brilliant job. He's not exactly. We don't have much in common necessarily. He's quite a forceful character. But
and who are you exactly?
Idiot in a tweed suit.
Yeah.
But he did a brilliant job in America. I mean, he really, because that firm was not on its knees. But in the 80s, it had a good 1980s, and then it was really lost.
It was a different era. I mean, first of all, taking a step back even before that, the luxury consumer in America was not American; it was Chinese. And I remember going to the earliest events I attended were for Sphero Tourbillon from Jaeger, Grand Complication AP offshore. All these crazy things that today are effectively irrelevant. Because they weren't catering towards domestic clients; they were catering towards the Chinese, literally, and they would say that it wasn't a secret.
It's a problem with Piaget. I mean, Piaget finally, I think, under Ben Clymer, was doing good things. But God, it took him a long time to kind of row back from that decision to basically make white metal stuff that was time only and kind of weird.
That's exactly right. So anyway, Francois emailed and said, "I want to meet you." He invited me to meet him and his publicist Paul Lerner, who I'm still very friendly with. And he invited me to the manufacturer in Les Brassus. And for AP to be your first trip into Switzerland is quite something special.
My mum was better. I went to Patek first.
No. You can't compete with Nick Fox.
And it was when they had the museum in the shop on the Rue de Rhone, and it was one room with a couple of cabinets.
And they closed the whole thing for you?
No, they didn't need to. It wasn't very popular in 1992 or something like that, ridiculous like that. But I mean, to go to Les Brassus from New York must have been an experience anyway.
So first of all, I was still in graduate school. And my thesis for Columbia was actually due while I was there. And the hotel next door, which is now this beautiful, it
now looks like a very, very, very grand version of Camp X-Ray, I think. Really.
Very Francois. But I'm sure you've been to the old version of it.
The old version was charming. It was like you expect people to do yodeling outside.
It was, but it didn't have the internet.
What do you expect? This is Switzerland in the early 2000s.
So I was finishing my thesis on the way up in the back of the bus.
What's wrong with posting it?
Exactly. And so I get to the hotel thinking I'll just be able to send it when I get to the hotel. And there is no internet at all. I'm not talking just no Wi-Fi. I couldn't plug in. I couldn't do anything. And so the next day when we had flown somewhere else, I had to email my professor, a guy named Sam Friedman, who's a very well-known journalist in the New York Times. He writes the religion column of the New York Times. I mean, iconic guy in New York. And I had to say I was in the Jura Mountains and I had no Wi-Fi. And he's like, "What are you even talking about?" So ended up doing that. Graduated from school, and then when Francois said, "Hey, we want to run ads and do events with you as the host," I said, "Okay, I think we might have something here. So I represented these young, emerging, affluent guys that kind of look like me, dorky, technical guys. Like it wasn't the typical watch buyer. It was guys that really cared about the story more than the cost.
I mean, there's the. I hate the word collector, but we call them the multiple watch buyer. I don't know, but that is a relatively recent phenomenon.
It is, yeah. In particular, those under 40. In the past, if you had asked, and I know this, if you looked at Patek, AP, Vacheron, Lange, the average age of their consumer was in the 60s.
Yes.
Right now, it's in their 40s. Right, so we've dropped 20 years, and there are many huge collectors in their 30s and 20s.
Oh yeah, I mean Zacatec or whatever you call it.
I love Zacatec.
Yeah,
I met Zacatec when he was 16 years old.
I mean, how many Pateks did he have by then?
I mean, Zacatec's on a different level.
Yeah, he is brilliant, though.
He is. He's a principal in a company called Municipal with Mark Wahlberg. I don't know if you knew that.
I don't know anything. I mean, who's Mark Wahlberg? I mean, I think it's a bit undignified at my age to know who these people are.
But Zach was a unicorn, truly, and still is, for the record. But there was nobody outside of people like him, and he was buying, I was writing about.
Yeah.
And we kind of came up together. And the site just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then one day we launched, in 2012, I was still in graduate school, we launched a Shopify
How long is
store.
this? How long is this graduate course? It seems to have taken
2 years.
But you managed to pack a lot in.
I did a lot.
You were running a sort of multi-billion business by the time you graduated.
Yeah, multi-hundred business. So it was 2 years, 2010 to 12. And so I was full-time graduate student, full-time running Hodinkee, freelancing, trying to have a life, etc. And so we launched a Shopify account selling straps in 2012. And back then, the media landscape in the U.S. menswear scene was very friendly. So if we did something GQ, Esquire, Hypebeast, everybody would cover it just because we're all in it together.
Yeah.
It's not that way anymore.
No.
And so everybody covered our little strap collection. We sold out like that.
But I wonder what the reason is for that, because I think maybe it's because there's more business people involved who like to kind of feel that getting a press release from a brand is a secret that only they have.
I think it's that, and I think those were the good old days of media. I mean, we used to go to the Lambs, or I was invited to the Lambs Club and see Anna Wintour there with her black car. I mean, it was the golden era of media.
It was, and you used to have Condé Nast headquarters was really like you had the town cars out, Lincoln town cars, 3 deep outside.
It was incredible. Yeah. It was incredible.
I mean, you really did witness the last days of Pompeii there.
Truly, and so I mean, tying into that. John Mayer became a contributor after, shortly thereafter, just because, we were young and into watches. And I would say a year or two later, after we launched our Talking Watches YouTube series, a big media group that we may or may not have just mentioned came to us and said, hey, we want to buy the business. And I said, great, take it. I'm done. I had no money, so it was wonderful.
Why not?
And so we ended up going really almost to the finish line there. And then a guy named Tony Fadell, who invented, among other things, the iPhone, the iPod, and Nest. He did a Talking Watches video with us, and we became very good friends. And he said, Ben, do not sell this business. Like, the deal with Condé was real money for me, but he's like, trust me, this is really something special. Let me help you raise money. So he invested some money, Google Ventures, John Mayer, etc.
You did very well, and you got a bit of money from Vuitton, didn't you, as well?
That was later. That was about 5 years later.
2016 or something.
Vuitton was 2020.
2020.
So we ended up raising money. We said, you know what, let's try to activate our audience in a new way because we were selling ads, and ads only get you so far. And I knew our audience was different. It's not, I don't want to name names, but there were a lot of other publications that were there just to kind of jerk off the industry.
Yes,
and that really wasn't us.
No, but there's a lot of that. And it's I think, again, that's the commercial side seeing this, what they see as low-hanging fruit without actually understanding the culture and the
right.
And the importance of it.
Right. We brought in a new audience. I remember a guy named Jim Seuss, who you may remember. He used to be the CEO of Tourneau 10 years ago.
Yes, he did.
He was a wonderful guy, and I knew him, and he said, Hodinkee was the best and worst thing that ever happened in our business. It was the best because now you have a whole new generation of young people walking into the store wanting to see the Rolex or whatever. It's the worst because everybody that walks in knows 10 times more than any of their sales staff. And so we created a whole new genre of collector. And that the industry didn't really know how to process, but I knew that they were willing to spend, and they were willing to spend on what we believed in, And I, to this day, I want to be able to look anybody in the eye and say, if we're selling it and you can afford it, you should buy it. So we started selling things, vintage watches, in 2015. And then we started designing our own limited editions, one of which I have here.
Which was the first one you did?
The very first one was with Max Busser.
How surprising.
He was also one of our first advertisers.
I thought he was. He's a very shrewd man.
Oh my God, he knows. I mean, he knows. And I had no money at the time, and he said, "Would you like one of our watches?" And I said, "I can't afford it." And he said, "Pick one you like and pay for it over as long as you want." And then he gave it to me at more than wholesale, less than wholesale rather. And he finds these guys in the early days and still does, and really invests in them. So Max was our first collaboration, the LM 101. Yeah. Back then he couldn't sell them as well, to be fair. It was a small company. It was probably about a 15-person company. I put every dollar we had into buying those 10 watches. We bought them at wholesale.
Fantastic.
We sold them all in a day, at a decent margin.
Yes.
And we went off to the races. So then we went on to work with Vacheron, Hermes,
The
Leica
Vacheron is
Twist.
fantastic.
Yes,
this
we have it here.
is a very interesting watch, because I think that helped them feel that their past wasn't necessarily a foreign country that they can't visit.
Yeah, no, that's it. So this is the Cornevage for Hodinkee that we designed here in steel pulsation dial. We did 36 pieces.
You did pulsation dial, fantastic.
Yep. So I designed that watch with them, almost 10 years ago. And we sold 36 of these pieces at $45,000 in 20 minutes. Vacheron had never seen anything like it. I mean, Richemont had never seen anything like it. This was, and it was also the first time that ever sold online. So because of that watch, I was on CNBC, Bloomberg, a few other, businessy type of shows, because this was a new moment in luxury. And I happen to love the watch.
It's a beautiful watch. I still think it's the best of your collabs.
No, thank you.
It really. I mean, but it was actually really important at the time, because now the collab thing is a bit.
It's a bit much.
You get good ones, you get bad ones,
Of
but
course.
it seems to be a mandatory thing. So in the marketing handbook of the,
And I think, if you look at, this is one of my favorites, certainly. We've since gone on to work with Leica. That camera there is a camera we designed. We've worked with Hermes. Really iconic brands.
Let's talk me through the camera.
Sure. So that's a Leica Q2 Ghost Edition. We designed it after my very first vintage Rolex was a 5512 sub with a ghosted bezel.
Oh, yeah.
And, I just think it's one of the chicest, most beautiful kind of Pantones you can imagine. So we designed two different cameras. This is the Q2, and then we did an M10P, which is the traditional big boy Leica.
The big thing, yeah.
And so, this is my camera. I bring it everywhere I go. And it's just a beautiful thing. But to be able, and it says Hodinkee on it. We did a big campaign for them.
How many did you make? Is it in unlimited?
No, the camera we did, I think 1,000 of this one. Of the first one we did 150, but the first one was $20,000. This is $5,000.
Yeah, but that's still a chunk of cash.
It is. It's
for
a chunk of
camera,
cash.
when you've got a telephone. I mean, you've got to. But I suppose you're speaking to the converter. But you actually had enough people who are interested in the mechanical stuff to
Absolutely.
then segue into that.
No question. And to give you an idea, we did these G-Shock collaborations, which are dramatically less expensive. Those units when we did with Ed Sheeran and John Mayer were in the tens of thousands.
But that again, I think this is something very interesting that I want to talk about a bit, is that this association of perception of value is not necessarily, because if it's an authentic object,
Absolutely.
even at $3,000 or $2,000,
No question.
it's still an authentic object. It's why I would rather have a Rolex Oyster Perpetual than some highfalutin fancy super duper extra enamel, extra finishing, extra bullshit.
I love the extra bullshit.
Yeah. With added vernissage or whatever they call it. I'd rather have just a good, solid, honest piece.
Agreed. And that's what I think we found really interesting is before we did G-Shock, we worked with Swatch. Before Moonswatch came out, we were some of the first collaborations in about 10 or 15 years. And so we were selling these System 51 swatches to Patek collectors, Lange collectors, Cartier collectors, and they would wear them along with these mega watches. And as you said, the authenticity of our designs were always there, and that's what allowed it to work, and that's what allows it to continue to work today.
And it really does. So talk us through it. Now you've got famous. One of my great loves is vintage Cartier, and you've got the famous Pebble, the limited edition.
Yep.
What do you think about the sort of surprise revival, greatest since Lazarus, of the Cartier watch business? I mean, that's been a phenomenon.
To me, it's probably the story of the past 5 years.
It is.
And if you spoke with Cyril, last year, his ambition even last year was to triple the business in the United States. That business is gigantic. To triple that business in the United States, it's just remarkably ambitious.
I mean, what was brilliant was that he actually. I was the voice in the wilderness. I was this Cassandra saying, this is you must go back. And every CEO said, no, we're going to do Jour et nuit, tourbillon, phase de lune, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I said, this is crap. Why don't you just make a nice tank or a nice Centre or whatever? And then when they did, not listening to me at all, they actually had a CEO who actually knew what was the right thing to do. They took off like a rocket, because it's again, you can start at a very low price, but you still got an authentic object. It's still a Cartier.
Yeah, it's still a Cartier, and now with Watches of Switzerland, I have visibility into the Cartier business, and it is remarkable just how much demand there is for everything from a little quartz tank to things like this and beyond. I happen to love the Pebble. I have owned a few London Cartiers, like proper London Cartiers, including a unique blue dial Centre, which I sold to Philips last year.
Watch.
And this was an opportunity to really lean into the Cartier London environment today. And I think for me, if you look at the watches that I brought, these are all modern watches. I still buy vintage watches and I collect vintage watches, but now I have 2 children. My life has changed dramatically. I dress differently now. I kind of consume differently now. I'm really at the high-low point of my life where like I can have something like a split-second Lange and a G-Shock in the same watch roll.
But I think that's great. I mean, I don't go quartz yet, but I do actually probably with Phil and Marie. I mean, that's basically a quartz.
Well, I'll give you a Ben Clymer G-Shock, and then you can have a digital.
Oh, that's
watch.
great. That'll be brilliant. That'll be brilliant.
But it's like my actual life, not the life that you see on Instagram, which is like a
You're always at the driving range driving a Porsche in a dinner jacket,
which is total bullshit. As at least my actual life is upstate with 2 children. One of which is 3, the other is 1. Mm-hmm. So I mean, like young children. We live out in the middle of nowhere. I wear a Tudor, a Rolex, Omega, or a G-Shock pretty much every day. And it also extends to how I dress these days as well. It really I was never as fashionable as you.
I'm not fashionable, but I just got a few old clothes.
You've got some beautiful clothes. But I used to really care about that stuff. And I still do, to be clear, but I just don't have the bandwidth at this point.
No, and it's understandable. And I mean, also, I'm a little older than you, and I mean, I wish I hadn't wasted so much time thinking about what colour socks I'm going to wear and whether it matches my tie or my pocket handkerchief and which is better. And these were seriously questions that you and I would understand.
Yeah.
And you're very lucky to have. Is that my coffee finally? It is. Fantastic. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's fantastic. Isn't that fantastic?
I mean, that was a 20-minute coffee run.
Yeah, they really took their time to make this, and it's great. I hope it tastes as good as it Oh, look at that.
And so again, I've kind of found what works for me, which as I'm sure the watchers at home can assume, I am extremely American. And proud of it. And what I found is just that good old Ralph works perfectly for me. And
I mean, he's brilliant. I mean, Ralph Lauren is the great American, as a cultural icon. I hate the word icon and I hate the word cultural, but he is a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And in America, it's the longest. It's sort of like having James Bond or the Rolling Stones. It's that kind of length of franchise and that kind of depth of impact as well.
It absolutely is. Many years ago, before I kind of figured myself out, I would go to, I'm friendly with Mark Cho, like many of us. I'd go to the Armory and try back.
Mark Cho, great man.
Great man. And try on, all these other, kind of crazy, I shouldn't say crazy, like really wonderful, beautiful things. But then when I discovered, Purple Label and just what Ralph can do, I mean, I've owned this jacket for 7 years and, still fits.
Looks like 6.5.
Yeah. And, the beauty of a great Ralph Lauren suit or jacket, it goes forever. And it works for me. It goes with everything.
You're very lucky because your mindset is very sensible on these things. Let's talk about what we got in here now.
Yeah.
So we've done the Pebble.
Yes.
We take the Pebble out and show how wonderful it is.
Sure. So the Pebble was a limited edition of, I think, 100 and something. Do you remember?
Yeah, I don't. Were there different colours or not?
No, just this.
And it'd been 150, I think, then.
Let's see. I can take a look. And, it became something of a thing. And I think, these trade for well above retail now. This is, yes, number 17 out of 150. It's just a beautiful watch, and it fits. When I'm in a proper suit, not like this. I mean, this is just such a special thing. Like,
it is a beautiful watch. They did. I think it's probably the nicest one they did.
I agree. I mean, look, yourself probably like myself. We have the opportunity, if we really want something, to get a lot of watches. You know. And I don't take that opportunity lightly, and so it has to be.
It's a great privilege.
Really
they only give it to them, and so we don't. Most of us can't afford to pay it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So I mean, we give them these amazing gifts that we got no idea what to do with because we can't afford them.
Yeah, it's not really a gift, is it?
No.
So the Pebble I wear really for special occasions, and I'm on the way to Watches and Wonders, such as you. And Cartier is just a brand that I have so much reverence for, and it's just a beautiful thing.
And it sort of crystallizes the. That era of elegance at Cartier, the return to elegance.
That's a real Cartier, so to speak. Often in the watch world we say, is it a Patek or a real Patek?
Yeah.
A Nautilus or an Aquanaut is not a real Patek to me. To the Patek collector, and that will be controversial. But when we say real Patek, it's a complicated watch.
I disagree because I think if you look at, for example, the Caliber 89 was an amazing thing.
Of course.
But Vacherong's still doing the Caliber 89 effectively. It's in competition with itself to make the most complicated watch.
Correct.
But that was a game changer at the time. But I think before then, a real Patek, maybe it would have been a Golden Ellipse.
Sure.
Because they had something like 60 odd references of that at one point.
Yeah.
So I mean, I understand the complications, and I mean, if we look at a 130 or a 2499 or a 1518 or whatever they are icons to us, but they weren't the general production.
I think that's fair. Look, I think any Calatrava I would consider a real Patek. I guess what I mean to say is, look, I own a Nautilus, I own an Aquanaut. They're great watches, but it's not something that I get a real special feeling wearing. My first Patek was a 3940 perpetual calendar. I bought it for myself.
Great watch.
Oh, it's incredible. And to
a very
me,
important watch. I think it launched in 1985, wasn't it?
Yeah, 85.
Fantastic, very, very important watch.
It is. It really, and it's wonderful to wear, and it's a watch that I'll never sell. I bought it secondhand. It was out of production.
And I mean,
by
they
the
would
time.
have been then at literally the loose change in your pocket.
Well, I can tell you. I mean, I bought mine. I bought it as a gift to myself for graduating from grad school, and it's a 3940G, and I paid $30,000 US for it.
Which is, and the great thing about these things is, as long as you don't speculate, you're going to get your money back on things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a proper thing, and you can wear it. And I just love that about what you do, is that you have this, you're very understated, but you have this commitment to the sort of authenticity of these things. I mean, the Hodinkee clock was not your greatest moment, but I mean, there's only one or two of those things, and honestly, for me, you haven't really put a foot wrong.
Well, here's the thing, and like the Hodinkee clock is one of my...
But it's one of the best things because it's never going to be forgotten.
No, of course. It's one of my fondest, and look, it was alarming at the time, literally, but it was never intended to be. I've actually never shared this story. So we were supposed to open a retail store in Soho in 2020. COVID happened.
Yeah,
we never did. So we were also supposed to close a Series B, an investment round at that, shortly around that time. That ended up happening, but it was delayed about 6 months. And so, running a small business is challenging, especially when you've gone ahead. Like it was a signed deal. We were just waiting for the funding to kick in. And so we just said, you know what? Like you'll see the story on the site. Like we ended up selling off limited editions we were holding back to basically just keep the lights on. Like we were a small business. And so we built 96 of these clocks that were supposed to be clientele within our Soho store as something like, you visit the store, you can check it out. The clocks were made by LePay. That we've never publicized.
Which should have been, we should have,
I know. The one mistake that I think we would made looking back was that we didn't publicize the LePay connection, right? LePay is...
It would have meant nothing at the time.
You don't think?
No. I mean, a couple of people knew about LePay as a sub-supplier, and it's up there with Juno, the automaton guy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
People wouldn't have known who that was.
But I think you're right, but I think if people dug into who LePay was, and now it's owned by LVMH.
Yeah, but that's because the two boys actually were quite interested in the watch industry.
Right.
And they're clever and they've got money. So, I mean, they buy anything that's sort of interest.
Right. So all this to say that the quality of the clock, I stand by it till the day that I die.
Which I can understand. I mean, it's a view and...
But anyway, so we ended up selling those, and the world fucking lost it, and blah blah blah. And
that's these shitstorms in a teaspoon,
Well, look, I can tell you that a company that ended up investing a good amount of money into us later, not LVMH, a private equity firm, they were in the final stages of closing our deal when the clock happened. I said, "Oh shit! Like, is this deal going to fall apart?" And their response was, "We love it because, like, first of all, it was like 100 clocks. Who cares, right? That's not a big deal." And on top of that, it shows how much people care about your
engagement.
Exactly, the engagement. And to this day, I mean, this private equity firm says we have the best engagement they've ever seen in any company. Whether they like it or love it, people just want to talk about it.
They feel they're stakeholders.
Yeah, a little bit. And look, I mean, all these trolls on Instagram and everything, when they put me in a photograph or a meme or something next to Francois or Thierry Stern, great. Like I'm this fucking nobody from Rochester,
It's quite something, isn't it?
It really is. So we did that, and then the firm invested, LVMH invested, Tom Brady, all these fancy folks. And then in 2020, I stepped down from the business. I moved into a chairman role. Got married, had kids, did all that stuff.
Played a lot of golf.
I played
a lot of golf. And then they called you back to save the world.
Something like that.
So like Cincinnatus from his plow or whatever, you were called to save the Republic. We haven't talked about the honey gold.
Yes. So I would say my favorite high-end brand of them all is a Lange and Son. Very good friends with Wilhelm, the CEO.
Wilhelm is a great guy.
Oh, he's amazing. And look, he's also, I think, and we can fact check this, the longest-serving Richemont CEO.
I think it's only because they can't get to Germany.
They don't know where Dresden is. Yeah, exactly.
They don't know where Dresden is.
Exactly.
It takes more than it's not a direct flight from Geneva.
Exactly right.
He's safe.
So this is, I think Lange, in terms of, forget all the bullshit and all the hype and all that. They just make the best quality watches.
They do make very good quality watches.
They really do.
I wouldn't say the best, but I would say they're extremely good. And
so who would you say is the best?
Overall, I'm Patek, but I have to say that because I'm biased.
So here's look. I love Patek, and I probably, in fact, I do.
But this is what Williams always said to me. I only make 6,000, and I said, well, they probably make 6,000 watches of your quality, and then they make 20,000 24s, then they make however many Nautiluses. So I mean, they have that already. They've got that in their top slot, and then they've got all this other shit as well. You know,
They do. Look, I agree with that, and to be clear, I own more Pateks than I do Langes.
Well, I think it says a lot. I mean, but they are good.
They are good, and what's amazing about Lange is that the least expensive watch, the Saxonia, is finished at the same level that this is. You cannot say the same about a Patek. The new Calatrava is very nice. The one that they discontinued a few years ago was like, that watch should have been $6,000 in my opinion. You know, when it was selling for 20. The new one is absolutely worth it.
The new one is
lovely.
good.
It is. And Patek can do this plus. When they get, this is going to sound ridiculous, but to our audience, I feel like it's okay. Anything above 200,000 at Patek is
It's
fantastic.
unbeatable. It's unbeatable.
I agree. Anything below 100,000 it's okay. You know, it's okay. I think if you compared a 50,000 Lange to a 50,000 Patek, Lange would come out on top. I'm not talking about design. I'm talking about quality.
But what's that world time chrono that they've got?
Yeah, the 5935.
It's not bad watch. You got a lot of watch for the money there.
It's a very nice watch, but again, I guess what I'm looking for is objective quality, like hand finishing, hand work, etc. And Patek is more CNC.
Yeah, but they would. I mean, I suppose at that level, they're an industrial player.
Right.
I mean, I think what's interesting about Lange is that it's kind of top end Patek. If you regard Richemont as a watch brand with different layers, it's sort of top end, super comp. Wait a long time. But what do you think of the gold Ulysses, whatever it is called, the
Odysseus?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Love it.
I love that watch.
You mean the one that hasn't come
Yeah, the
out
one
yet?
hasn't come out yet, but will have come out and probably been sold by the time this comes out because we have such a long lead time. But no, that I love because that's a sort of real. That's a real Portacevo watch made by a German
the gold
company.
Odysseus we're talking about. I can tell you this, I haven't bought a watch in a long time. The minute I saw that, I said I want it. It's incredible.
Well, I think Wilhelm will probably be happy to oblige.
Let's hope, yeah. But I think honey gold in particular, which is this kind of proprietary metal, is just a fun thing to own. So most of the Langes that I buy now are honey gold. And again,
honey
I don't
gold
have
is a
that
great
many.
thing. And they've had it for 10 years now?
Yeah. And so this is the split second black dial. This is a real watch, as they say.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think, for example, the double split and the triple split are possibly the biggest contribution. They're proper contributions to watchmaking.
They are, but they're so again, I'm happy to criticize everybody here. They're unwearable. You know?
Yes, they're far too big.
They're far too big.
They were unwearable at the time when big watches, you would put it on and you couldn't actually get any overcoat sleeve over it.
Correct.
It was like wearing a tin of tuna on your thing. But it is a brilliant watch.
It is. And so, when I love split seconds, I love chronographs. When I was looking at a high-end split, it was between this and the 5370P.
Why didn't you get that?
I think this is a more
think-
charming watch.
yeah.
I do. Look, I love the 50. Here's the thing also. That,
You can afford to get both. So.
no, not quite. The 5370. So by the time that I could afford one, it was the 5370P blue dial. The black dial I preferred dramatically. By the time this comes out, there'll be a 5370R with a brown dial.
That'd be quite nice.
That should be quite nice. Yeah. So maybe someday. But I love split seconds. A split second Patek would be a dream. But I love this one. I really.
This is a good watch.
It is. It's a good watch.
And it is made. It's for me. It's like looking at the back of. Well, it is like looking at the back of my 5970 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's you want to kind of fall into the movement almost.
Exactly.
You want to be in one of those immersive videos where it all comes out in bits and it comes towards you.
And I think also, I mean, Patek. I mean, the games that are required to get any Patek these days. And Lange plays games too. Everyone does.
Yeah.
But
I don't think they're games. I think games might be a bit unfair. I just think it's if somebody's put in the hours.
Right. There's a system to it.
It's like you can't go into and say, I'll have that Ferrari, please.
Right.
And say, well, no, you won't. You say, well, I've his money. No, you won't.
Yeah. But what I like about Lange is that they really listen to collectors. And Wilhelm really does care about feedback.
He does.
So that's a good one. And then I've got the watch that I'm wearing is a Platinum Day, which is like the most boring watch there is.
That's a new one, isn't it? Because they fluted the bezel.
Brand new. So 2022.
Yeah.
So it was actually not too many people, because I am who I am, give me watches, which I understand. I mean, I don't get that many watches either. My wife got me that watch for my 40th birthday.
Beautiful.
Engraved on the back. I mean, this is a grown-up watch.
And it's done in her handwriting, which is nice as well.
Done in her handwriting. It's platinum, 36 millimeter. I can wear that watch anywhere. People think it's a steel Datejust. To me, I mean, like, that's a lifetime watch. All of these will be kept for a long time, but that is a forever watch.
And the great thing about these is you never get bored with them.
I can wear that with anything, and it's very understated. That's a really neat version of that reference with just a silver stick dial. Most of them are the baby blue dial.
But also this, I mean, the milling. It must be it must be the first year they did milled.
That's exactly right.
Platinum.
So that's you know your stuff, Nick.
I do
you
my
should write a
best
book on Rolex.
Maybe I'll give it a go one day. I don't know.
So, for those at home, so, the platinum day dates typically had smooth bezels because they couldn't do the...
Well, I mean, of course they could, but they chose
not to.
They chose not to until they could do it as I mean, that's the brilliant thing about them is if they can't do it on an industrial scale that's to an extremely high standard, they just don't do it. They'd rather,
So this watch in 2022 was introduced with this bezel, which is iconic Rolex. This has the new, the day dates always get the best movements first.
Yeah.
And it was my 40th birthday, so this is my go-to watch every day.
And it is still, I believe, what they believe to be the top watch.
It is.
I mean, everybody got skewed into the Submariners and stuff like
Daytona,
that, but that was the ultimate watch. And I mean, I think that for me, I would have liked to have seen the movement that they put into the Sky Dweller, which is which is a horrible watch, I think. But they know that I think that, and they could have put that movement into that and given it an annual calendar or perpetual calendar or whatever, and that would have been a nice upgrade for the best watch they do.
Yeah, the Sky Dweller is a really interesting one. Look, I love every Rolex, and if you said you had to have one of every model line, I would accept it. Sky Dweller, I don't know that I would. I don't. It's too big. The ring in the middle is just so visually is just so distracting.
It's so the lack of harmony. I mean, I'm quite sort of symmetrical in this thing, so I like to see. And I'm used to seeing that because that's not symmetrical, but I'm just so used to seeing it's just like a tree. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It has leaves and then they don't have leaves, and there's not much I can do about it. I can't say. But when you get something, actually someone goes out of their way to make something like that, and it's contemporary to you, it's a kind of worrying moment.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because that watch has the potential to be the hottest thing they make, right? Like if they redesign that, the movement's incredible.
The movement is incredible, and also this, although it's a period that because they've discontinued Yachtmaster 2, for example.
Correct,
the same sort of. I mean, that was another shocker.
Yeah, but look, I think Rolex these days, we'll see next week, but these days are having fun with it, which I really appreciate. My earliest days, dealing with Rolex was really, they took themselves so seriously.
Oh, they were terrible. I mean, it was like dealing with the press office was in the position of having to say no in several different languages in very different ways.
Correct.
No, we can't do that. No, we can't do this. But now they're very, very clever because they're more respectful than ever of the core collection.
Correct.
So they might move a millimeter, but they put into the market fun stuff that they then. You recognize it's fun, and then you buy it for a couple of years, and then it's gone, and it's something else, and it's also fun.
It is. They've really. I love Rolex of today.
I think Rolex today is exactly what Rolex should be.
I agree.
It's a proper watch for people who don't buy watches.
That's exactly right. And I think all the credit to Jean-Fred Dufour. I mean, he really changed everything there. The puzzle dials, even the OP in yellow, bright yellow.
That was fantastic.
I know. I tried to buy one the other day from our Bond Street store. We didn't have it, but it's certified pre-owned because it's discontinued. I would love that watch. It's just really fun, and everyone think. I mean, we covered the Bond Street store on Hodinkee. Every comment was, "You can't buy a fucking watch. Why? Why are you doing this?"
Yeah.
That's not true. I mean, I can see how many watches are out there.
Yes.
There are watches to buy. I just don't think people have. People
have got the idea that it's. I mean, people who probably have one. I mean. They maybe went to the shop once and were kind of you couldn't buy something, and then therefore that's their view on Rolex.
Right, and they're all asking for a Daytona, and you can't get that. Like that's true. You cannot walk in and just expect to get any Daytona. Right. Maybe a diamond covered something or a yellow gold something, but probably not. But if you want to buy a steel Datejust or there is stuff out there, and I think that is COVID really was amazing for watches, but also terrible for watches.
It was terrible for watches. You got a lot of people in there just believing that this was like crypto but better.
Right. So I did. I host. We own Betteridge in the U.S.
What is Betteridge?
So Betteridge it's a retailer, but it's located in Vail, Palm Beach, and Greenwich.
Very nice.
Yeah. I mean, it is like really to me, it's the crown jewel of.
I would say.
And really iconic type of place. And so I hosted an event at Betteridge in Greenwich, which is
with IWC.
No, with Watches of Switzerland.
Oh, wow.
So Watches of Switzerland owns it. So we did an event there, and I invited my neighbors, my friends, and these are all people that can afford a Rolex. And I said, "How many of you guys have been in the store?" Almost none, because they said, "What's the point in going in? I can't get a Rolex, I can't get a Patek." And so for that night, I asked the store manager, I was like, "Can we just make sure that we can have some?" And we put out 12 watches that you could buy, And they weren't Daytonas, but we had an Explorer 1 in steel. That's a great fucking watch.
Yeah, it is. I mean, for me, the bicolor was fantastic.
I love it.
I love that watch. That was one of the best launches of recent years.
Yeah. I would buy that watch, actually.
It's a fantastic
But these guys that live in the Greenwich area, and they're not even going into the dealer in Greenwich because the news tells them that they can't buy anything. I mean, that's
the news maybe a year ago tells them that.
Yeah, but no one's coming out and saying that there are watches for sale, but there are.
No, but I mean, I think we are we look at it from a rather myopic point of view. I mean, these people have other things in their lives, you know.
doubt.
So their received vision is that it's impossible to get anything. How many minutes have we done? Okay. Time for our Dover Soul, I think.
Is that it?
Let's wind this up properly.
Sure.
You want to quickly talk me through that watch?
Sure, might as well. So this is, look, there's, you know, in many ways, Ben Clymer and Hodinkee are connected, obviously.
Well, I mean,
I started the business.
The words
but
no and shit spring to mind.
something like that. I have never, ever done anything with my name on it. So then when John Mayer put his name on some G-Shocks, and then Ed Sheeran put his name on some G-Shocks, and they were like, hey, why don't you do one? I said, fine. If you guys are doing it, I'll do it too. So this is a G-Shock I designed. It's the smallest iconic, you know, kind of G-Shock case. Designed in Hodinkee colors with some homages to some special Rolexes and Pateks that I love. Our 3 offices on the dial. We did many thousand of these. Thankfully, we actually sold them all, which was great.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so, you know, I wear this watch all the time.
Is that waterproof?
Yeah.
Even though it's electric?
Yeah.
God, what a world we live in.
You can have it, Nick. It's, you know.
Wow. I wouldn't know what to do with it. It reminds me of my youth when liquid crystal displays were all the rage.
There you go. It's just a fun watch, and again, around London, like I wear it when I'm traveling to places where I should be wearing gold Rolexes, and I wear it all.
But this actually, I mean, I presume once you've got the hang of it, this is actually probably a very useful watch.
Oh, absolutely. And I can tell you that, you know, I see these out and about in around where I live and in my.
It must be quite a nice feeling.
It's incredible. I mean, it's really incredible. And the G-Shock when I was a kid, I mean, that's what I wore when I was 10 years old, was a G-Shock. So to have one with my name on it is pretty special. And every time I travel, I wear one, so that I don't have to be worried about, you know, if someone says don't go out with blah, blah, blah in Paris, then I can just throw that on and it still feels good.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank
Because
you,
I know you're on a very tight schedule promoting Watches of Switzerland. Because we didn't say this. Did we say that you're owned by Watches of Switzerland now? Or you're part of Watches of Switzerland?
I don't think we have, but you're welcome to.
Watches of Switzerland made many canny business decisions, but I think the canniest business decision of all was to purchase Hodinkee. And
We'll see.
Anyway, Ben, thank you so much.
Thank
it's
you,
been a
Nick.
real pleasure.
I
And I'm
appreciate
just
it.
sorry, once again, that George wasn't able to join us, because he would have been far better at asking questions than I am.
And I miss George. Where is he right now?
He's working.
He has a job?
He's got a day job. I mean, you know, he's busy.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just lying around the house doing fuck all. So
Yeah,
I mean,
you and me both, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick.